We've got an update on Quinn Priester. The World Baseball Classic is still going on, and a bunch of Brewers are still playing in it. Jack Stern, a Brewer Fanatic, will join us tonight, and a Bob Uecker documentary is coming soon. All of that and more on tonight's edition of the Hunter Baumgardt Show here on the Hunter Baumgardt Show YouTube page, the Facebook page, Hunter Baumgardt Sports, and on socials. You can follow me at Hunter B on Air. So let's dive in here tonight. A couple of different things here. First of all, we get the technical glitches worked out. We got those worked out. Let's talk some Brewers. Hey, Jack Stern, Brewer Fanatic, going to join us at 7:15. So in about 15 minutes, going to pick Jack's brain on a bunch of Brewers topics. I'm excited to talk to him because he's got great insight, especially with the pitching side. He works with pitchers on the collegiate side. So I'm always interested to hear what he's seeing with the Brewers pitchers. And he can really deep dive into what he's seeing in spring training with those guys, starters, relievers, who's going to make the team. We'll talk to Jack about all of that coming up. So that's coming up in about 15 minutes. Stay tuned for that. It'll be the first guest on the Hunter Baumgardt Show here. So very excited for that. We'll also get into the World Baseball Classic, Venezuela and Italy about to start their semifinal game in Miami. Winner plays Team USA tomorrow night in the final at 7 o'clock. Of course, U.S. beating Dominican Republic last night. And we're going to get into that here probably after Jack. We're going to get into World Baseball Classic, and we're going to get into why last night's ending of the game is a great reason, a great example of why ABS is going to be good for baseball. We'll get to that here in a little while. And also, we're going to get into the update on Quinn Priester because Quinn Priester got the update on his wrist, going to be out to start the season. What does that mean for the rotation? How long could Priester be out? Is this a long-term injury? Will this turn into a long-term injury? We're going to get into all of that coming up here in just a moment. But I want to start with a couple of things. One is this game that just ended. I'm if you've been, I just shout out to those covering the game because this was almost a 4-hour affair in Arizona. It just went final. The Brewers have beaten the Dodgers 24-9 tonight, 24-9. So we're almost like doing a post-game show tonight, but there's, other things to talk about with spring training as a whole rather than just this game. But I think we got to start with this game. Let me read just some of the box score here, okay? How about let's start with Brandon Lockridge, who had a grand slam in this game. By the way, the Brewers were down 7-0 in this game. They then scored 10 runs in the fifth inning to take a 10-7 lead. They then scored 9 runs in the seventh to take a 19-7 lead. So they scored 19 unanswered runs. Dodgers get a run in the seventh, the eighth, and then the Brewers tack on 5 more in the ninth inning to win it 24-9. Lockridge 3 for 5, 4 RBIs, 3 runs scored. You got Jet Williams had a nice day, 2 for 3, an RBI and a walk and a run scored for him. Then you had, Cooper Pratt with a couple of RBIs, a couple of runs scored as well. Luis Lara, 2 for 4. 3 RBIs and 2 runs scored. Rengifo was 2 for 4 with a run scored. Adams had a couple of RBIs. Tyler Black, 3 RBIs on a hit, 2 runs scored. Lockridge, as I mentioned, with a home run, the grand slam. Brady Ebel homering against the team that his dad is on the coaching staff of. He hit a home run in the 7th, his first of spring. So, it was unbelievable. You look at everybody in the lineup, and you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who was not on base in this game. I'm just quickly looking. I guess Leonard came in late. He did not reach base. Otherwise, let's see. Rodriguez, the catcher, came in late. He did not reach base. But otherwise, you pretty much had nearly everybody in this lineup. Wilkin walked, so he was on base. You pretty much had everybody, substitutes and not, save for maybe a couple of players who they all got on base. So that was a outpouring of runs. So maybe that makes you feel a little better about the loss in the NLCS because they put 24 runs up on the Dodgers. But anyway, that is the definition of what spring training can be. The Brewers win it 24-9. They're now 10-12 on the spring. course, the Dodgers are 16-8 on the spring. Of course they are. Of course they are. Want to see your comments throughout the entire night here, whether it's when we're on with Jack, whether it's when we're talking about anything that we may be talking about here tonight. I want to start with some news that came out this afternoon, and this is really, really neat. And this is a documentary about Bob Uecker that is coming out this summer. This was announced earlier today, and the really cool thing about it is that they are going to show a preview of this coming on opening day. So get this. The Brewers will offer fans an exclusive first look at Uecker, a new documentary celebrating the extraordinary life and legacy of Bob Uecker. It'll be a special post-game preview on opening day at the ballpark. Immediately following the conclusion of the game, fans are encouraged to remain in their seats for the debut of a 20-minute segment from the film, marking the first ever public showing of the documentary that's been more than 2 years in the making. It chronicles the incredible life of the immortal and beloved Bob Uecker. It's produced by September Club, and it will enjoy a major theatrical release this summer with more details to be announced. This is awesome. And it's really cool to continue to keep Bob Uecker at the forefront heading into year 2 without him. Of course, there were so many celebrations. Opening day last year was emotional with the video. And then you had, of course, the big day in August where we celebrated him. But this is going to keep that rolling. And this documentary, I can only imagine how special it is going to be. In fact, I have seen them and did, a couple of years ago in Bob Uecker's final season as the voice of the Brewers. Saw guys filming him a lot, and I have a feeling that some of that was definitely this that you will see. And so that it was really neat. You kind of knew when they were around and they were filming, and you kind of thought. I always thought in the back of my mind, like, what's that going to turn out to be? What are they making here? And oh man, I cannot wait to see it come this summer. So again, but you're going to see 20 minutes of it after the game on opening day when the Brewers play the Chicago White Sox next Thursday, 1:10 first pitch. So if you're coming to opening day, stick around for the whole game, enjoy that afterwards, and then make sure to, obviously the Brewers will announce more when it's released this summer. If you're not planning to go to opening day, that might put you over. If you're debating whether to go to opening day or not, I would suggest it, because that is going to be a really, really special documentary. I would think. All right, so that's one thing. The second thing is the TV. Where can I find the Brewers on TV? Still getting that question a lot, and I understand it. Obviously, this is something that was announced that the Brewers are taking everything in-house. They're going to do Brewers TV. They're going to Brewers.tv is where you can find the season, $99.99 for the whole season. Okay, you can buy it. However, of course, the other part to that is if you had the Brewers on cable, the Brewers will, in all likelihood, like 99% sure, they'll still be on your cable. We are just waiting for the channels. So I know people are still talking about and still like, when are we going to get the channels? When do we get the channels? We're 10 days away from opening day. So the channels will be coming soon. I'm sure the Brewers are going to announce the channels, obviously by opening day. Within the next 10 days, you will have those channels. So just stay patient, stay with them. Major League Baseball and the carriers, I'm sure we're negotiating over this last month or so since the announcement. And it's so late in the year. It's impressive for them to be able to get everything together for this. And it's going to be really good and cool broadcast this year. So just sit tight on it. They are going to get those channels announced by opening day. Opening day will not come, and you won't know where to find the Brewers. And continue to keep tabs on my socials. If you still have questions, comment. I've been trying to reply to as many comments as I can on the Facebook page and everywhere else where people have questions about where they can find the Brewers, because you want to watch the Brewers. It's plain and simple. You want to watch the Brewers. Of course, again, Brewers.tv is where you can sign up. Like if you did it through the FanDuel Sports Network app, again, you can do that through Brewers.tv. But if you had them on cable, I would suggest not doing that quite yet and waiting, because in all likelihood, you are going to get it on cable. We've pretty much been assured of that. Plus, President of Business Operations, Rick Schlesinger, is scheduled to meet with the media on Wednesday. I'll be there, so we'll hopefully have even more information and any more questions answered there as well. I know they've been working on some traffic things as well, and so that will be discussed at that media briefing. So again, at Hunter B on air, all social medias, wherever you are, YouTube, Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you are, at Hunter B on air, and I'll keep you posted on all of those fronts. All right, before Jack gets to us here in about 5 minutes, want to talk about Quinn Priester just for a moment, because we got the latest on Quinn Priester. He's going to start the season on the IL. He's got neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome. And the hope right now for the Brewers is to treat it without surgery. Now, this has been something that other pitchers have had in the past, notably Zach Wheeler last September for the Phillies had to have surgery because he had a blood clot in his shoulder for TOS. However, Priester has the least serious of the three. Nerve, vein, or artery. His is nerve, so they're hopeful he can do without surgery, which is really good. And when Quinn Priester talked to the media after getting this diagnosis, he flew to Dallas to see a specialist. That's when he was diagnosed. And this is what Quinn Priester had to say when he talked about a timeline for return. Quote, "I think in my head late April or May, but I certainly think I'm on the optimistic side. As a player, I want to be back as quick as possible. Ultimately, I'll trust whatever the scheduling is there to make sure we do it right so that we don't run into anything else trying to rush it back." So he says in his head, late April or May, but that's optimistic. The more and more I think about that quote, the more and more I see that first sentence of being optimistic about April or May, I kind of think and ponder that this could be a 60-day IL stint for Quinn Priester, because if you're talking about getting back into a game, and that in late April or May, the question was from Adam McCalvey, MLB.com. He asked him, when do you think you can be back in a game? If late April or May is optimistic for a game, you would obviously assume he's going to go to Nashville, getting games there. I would think mid to late May then in the majors. And so at that point, 60-day IL takes you to about Memorial Day. Maybe that's when we see Quinn Priester. So that obviously puts you in, okay, there's a hole in that rotation, right? There's a hole in that equation because Quinn Priester was obviously a big part of this rotation last year once acquired. But I also think that opens opportunity. Let's take a look at our handy graphic here that we have pulled up many a time. Who will make the rotation, right? You've got Brandon Woodruff, Chad Patrick, and The Miz, 3 spots locked. Again, Patrick and Miz we know are in. Pat Murphy told us so. And then Brandon Woodruff, we assume, is in as well. Now, Brandon Woodruff may or may not be the opening day starter, but he'll be, I would think, in the opening day rotation, may just not be opening day specifically. And you might think, well, why is that? Well, they just might opt to give him 5 more days. He's pitching next Thursday. He's going to start the game against the Texas Rangers on Thursday. We'll see how that goes and see how they line him up after that. But again, Patrick, Miz, and Woodruff there, I think, are your 3 locks. Then the next 2 from left to right there, Brandon Sproat and Kyle Harrison, I think they're the leading candidates. And as wild as that sounds, because you've put time into Logan Henderson, and you've put time into Robert Gasser, and even Aaron Ashby's getting talked now. I think Ashby's maybe your 6th guy right now, but I think you're going to see. I think you're kind of those trades are going to bear fruit early when you talk about the Freddie Peralta deal and getting Brandon Sproat, and you talk about the Kyle Harrison or the Caleb Durbin deal, getting Kyle Harrison. I think it's going to bear fruit pretty quickly when it comes to those guys in that rotation. And again, don't sleep on Ashby quite yet either in that rotation. So again, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. It's going to be interesting to see when they, of course, decide, okay, we are going to now announce our opening day starter. We'll see when that is announced. And of course, we'll bring it to you then. And again, I think Mizorowski's probably the leading candidate, but still not ruling out Woodruff. As we sit here. Okay, it is time to bring in Jack Stern of Brewer Fanatic, as he joins us here. He is the first guest ever here on the Hunter Baumgardt Show. Jack, appreciate you joining me tonight.
Oh man, I feel super honored now. I think this is going to have to go like at the top of my resume, career accomplishments. First guest with Hunter Baumgardt. I don't think I've ever experienced anything like this before.
The adrenaline, I'm sure, is just pumping through you, as you know. It's comparable to maybe Chad Patrick, in Game 5. But hey, it's just try to calm the nerves as we go throughout this segment here. No, I'm really excited to have you on and talk about all the things that are surrounding the Brewers right now. Things are becoming clearer, of course, as we're 10 days away from opening day, but also some questions remain. As you've watched spring and you were down there for the first part of it there in February, what has been a thing or two that you've taken a note of that you think, okay, these are a takeaway or two so far from spring training that could translate to the regular season?
Yeah, I think just, we talk all the time about Pat Murphy and kind of the standard he sets for these guys, the way that he runs things. I was down there very early in camp, and it was pretty evident early on that Pat Murphy was already setting the tone then. And, spring training early on, it might be very easy to ease into things and, kind of take things one step at a time. And the Brewers have been doing some of that, but the intent with which these guys are practicing, we came into spring training right away, and Pat Murphy already had his checklist of, okay, here's what we need to do better. PFPs need to be better. We need to run the bases better. We got caught stealing too many times last year. We need to control the running game even better than we did last year. He had this whole laundry list of items already, things that the Brewers have identified from last year upon which they need to improve. And I think that's always the story, or it should be the story for any MLB team. How do you keep moving forward? How do you continue to be more competitive than you were last year? But it was just good to see that the Brewers are continuing to try to raise the standards. So, there's a lot of continuity from last year's team to this year. It's definitely not exactly the same group, but maybe compared to past seasons, this is not a year where the Brewers have had a ton of turnover. They're not going to have like a brand new team identity or anything. There's not a new manager. There's not a young core of players that's brand spanking new. They did bring in some guys, and there's some more guys coming up. But because of that, to me, the thing to watch is now, how do they maybe clean up some of those things that they weren't great at last year? Are they going to hit for a little bit more power? Are they going to steal more bases like we saw a couple of years ago? Are some of these little things going to continue to take a step forward? Because it did seem like right off the bat, there was a very clear focus on some of those areas.
I want to ask you about, because you talk about, and there has, like you mentioned, limited turnover. One of the pieces I really enjoyed from you while you were down at spring training was the piece about the coaching staff, and that kind of goes in with the base running and switch up at the first base coach, and of course Matt Erickson now going to coach third, and you have Jason Lane maybe being Murph's right hand man, so to speak. But how was that explained to you as far as some of the changes? Because we got a question last show about, usually when a team is really a successful 97 wins NLCS appearance, you don't see a lot of changeover in a staff, but there was significant changeover. How was that kind of relayed to you? And what do you think that meant going through the offseason for this team to make some changes in some key areas on the staff?
Well, I think the first couple that jumped out to me, even before getting down to spring training, was they made some changes on the base running side. Julio Bourbon is still in the organization. They still like a lot of what he brought to the table last year, and he's still going to be helping out across a couple of different levels, but he's not going to be the first base coach anymore. They brought someone new in. They brought Spencer Allen in from the college ranks to kind of hopefully help them out in that area. But outside of that, a lot of what I saw was giving different titles to guys to kind of better reflect the role that they actually play on the staff. And one of the things that Pat Murphy talked about that I put in that story was he didn't really want to add more names to that coaching staff. Not that he didn't want to bring in new names, because they brought in some new names to maybe replace a couple of guys, but he didn't want to multiply or add too much to the number of coaches, the number of voices that they had on the staff. Murphy said that he was more, right from the start, interested in clarifying and adding responsibilities instead of adding too many new voices or additional voices on top of what they already had. So Ricky Weeks is not in the dugout anymore. Instead of backfilling his role, what they're going to do is they're going to let each guy kind of specialize in what they think that he's best at. And It's an interesting arrangement. It's a little bit new, but I think baseball is in kind of this weird space with coaching where there's all this information out there now that wasn't necessarily out there 10, 15 years ago. And the challenge as a coach is, number one, you need to be able to understand it. But number two, you need to be able to be the guy who can explain it to some of these players, or not gatekeep the information, but kind of be the filter who knows, okay, when do I tell this guy about this thing? When do I maybe not tell him about this thing? And when I do tell him about this thing, how do I phrase it so that it actually makes sense? And I think baseball has kind of been trying to find the right balance there of, okay, what kind of roles do we actually need to make sure that all of that communication is happening? Number two, what's actually the right number of guys? Because it, like Pat Murphy talked about in that story that I wrote, there's a very fine balance between having enough guys that you are covering all the information and having too many guys where guys are going over the same information maybe in different ways or too many different ways where it might sound like coaches are talking over each other or there's competing messaging, different things like that. So Pat Murphy said, hey, we feel like we have the right balance of guys here. So they're going to kind of delegate all this stuff out, maybe new roles for guys to either, number one, reflect what they were already doing last year, like Jim Henderson's new role, Daniel DeMondesert. Hunter, you know him a little more because we interact with him a lot at the ballpark as the translator. Evan Martin, a couple of those guys, they were already doing game planning stuff last year, but they were just called assistant coaches. So now they have the game planning title on there. So it's a little more set in stone. So in that instance, there's not like a whole lot of change going on there, but new role for Matt Erickson, mainly so that Jason Lane can slide into the strategy side a little bit more. Daniel Vogelbach is on the hitting coach staff now. Very curious to see what he kind of does on more of the swing decision side, because that's something he was very good at as a player. But basically everybody is in these super specialized roles now where the Brewers and Pat Murphy feel that these guys can do what they do best, and then they can kind of bring that information back to him for the final decision. But the Brewers are doing things a little bit differently than any staff has really done it before without a bench coach. But I would not be shocked if this kind of becomes the new model for how baseball coaching staffs look.
Yeah, that is interesting. It could be kind of a leading edge a little bit there when you talk about, just like you said, defining the roles. And also, Pat Murphy gets, we've seen it time and time again where he gets the most out of his players and is able to get their best out of them. And I would assume that is probably going to be the case with the coaching staff as well. Let's get into the players here. Let's start with the rotation. Quinn Priester likely and will start the season on the IL. Otherwise, we'll see where Brandon Woodruff fits in, whether it's opening day or not. But otherwise, we know Chad Patrick, Jacob Mizorowski are in the rotation. You've talked a lot about Brandon Sproat, how he could be kind of that gem of that deal coming back from New York. What do you see in Brandon Sproat that makes you say that and gets you excited for him in a Brewer uniform?
I think it's the fact that this is a guy who seems to have the ability to do just about anything with a baseball. And, a lot of starting pitchers, a lot of pitchers in general, they kind of have limits on what kind of pitches do they throw best. Brandon Sproat does a little bit of everything. He's got that good sinker. The four-seamer has probably been the weak link out of all those pitches, but it's at least different from the two-seamer where it's a different look. He's got two different breaking balls for sure already in that good curveball, that good sweeping slider. He had a little bit of a shorter slider last year that he's turned into a mid-90s cutter now, which looks like a really effective pitch for him. He still has the changeup a little bit. I would guess the Brewers aren't going to throw that quite as much when they get into the regular season, but it is still there. When I see a guy who has the ability to do that many things with the baseball, there's just so much to work with there, and it gives the Brewers so much room to kind of decide which game plan is going to work the best for him. Chris Hook, Jim Henderson, these guys, we've seen how effective they've been at deciding, okay, which pitches are the pitches that you should be throwing in these counts that are going to get you the most results, that are going to help you work deeper into games, help you throw more strikes, help you miss more barrels. Brandon Sproat has so many different weapons that they can kind of look at and decide, okay, how does this fit into the mix? Do we throw this pitch more? Do we throw this pitch less? They've already helped him make one of those pitches a better version of the pitch that he had last year with that cutter. So when I see a guy like that and I see how much there is to work with, and then you pair him with this Brewers pitching development staff, that's where I get really excited about, okay, they really can mold this guy into the best version of himself just because there's so many different tools to work with.
Totally, and a guy obviously who has a high ceiling as well, and Kyle Harrison, he's a guy that gets me excited for sure. You look at some of the obviously past rankings and things, but also what he's done, and he has some major league experience. I would think he's part of that rotation as they break camp here in 10 days. What have you liked from what you've seen out of him in spring training overall? I know he got roughed up stat wise. You can put into that what you want a couple of days ago, but overall, he's had a solid spring and shown some of that potential.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably like, and maybe this is just because I'm always kind of trying to look more for diamonds in the rough, but out of all the pitchers that the Brewers brought in this year, he was kind of the one where I was like, I can see the vision here. I think he's a good project for them. But maybe some other guys I was looking at a little more, like Sproat or Shane Drowan, who also came over in that Red Sox deal. But the biggest thing that's jumped out for Kyle Harrison for me, and I'm not the only one saying this, is that new changeup that he's figured out. The Brewers have not historically been in recent years a team that really develops changeups. They've had a couple guys who throw some really good ones, but Devin Williams and Logan Henderson, what those guys do with the baseball, the ability to pronate it like that, that's not something you teach. Guys just have the ability to do that. So that's not the Brewers helping to develop that pitch. And, they didn't really do it with Kyle Harrison either. It sounds like he did a lot of work with some of his former Giants teammates over the offseason, but he figured something out with that. It now has about as much depth as any changeup thrown by any starting pitcher in baseball. So I think he's got the ability to bring something to that rotation that not a lot of Brewers starters have. Yes, you have Henderson. Yes, Woodruff's has gotten a little bit better. But Kyle Harrison's changeup is an outlier pitch, especially coming from the left side, where he's a guy who's going to have to face righties a lot. He's going to need that. So I think that's the thing that's jumped out to me the most because, with all the advancements in pitching development, like fastball changeup has always been the traditional way to go about it. And that still works pretty well for a lot of guys. So I'm very curious to see kind of how he's able to attack with those two pitches more than anything. And like I said, I think it's a little bit different from what the Brewers do with a lot of their starters. I think he's just got the ability to kind of give a different look and have a different way of getting some swing and miss. So again, maybe not a guy who every single weapon in that arsenal is quite as exciting as maybe a Sproat or maybe a couple of other guys, but like you said, he's got the prospect pedigree, excuse me. When I talked to him in camp, you could tell he's a guy who really understands pitching, really thinks about the game. And again, another guy who's with a Brewers coaching staff that I think is going to find the way to get the best out of him. And like I said, very curious to see how he goes after guys this year, but there is some upside there for sure.
Jack Stern joining us at Brewer Fanatic for just a couple of more minutes here on the Hunter Baumgardt Show. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, third base. They signed Luis Rengifo, and I think he'll, I'm pretty sure, switch hitter. I think he'll get a lot of playing time at third, but they also have talked about, and he's the quantum leap candidate from Pat Murphy, and that's David Hamilton. How do you see those two fitting into this infield? Do you kind of see, because how I see it is David Hamilton's more of that Andrew Monasterio role, maybe he gets a little more playing time, depending on how Joey Ortiz is doing, depending on how Rengifo's obviously doing at third base as well, but they seem to like him, so I have a feeling he's going to be a part of what they do.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect like full platoon or anything between those two guys, but I'm kind of leaning toward David Hamilton is going to get a good share of playing time there against right-handed pitching as a left-handed bat. He's a guy that the Brewers, like you said, Pat Murphy named him his quantum leap candidate. Even before that, people in the front office are speaking very highly of what they thought this guy is capable of. And a lot of it just comes back to they like the raw athleticism a lot. And I think that's more than anything what the Brewers tend to look at. You can look at performance. You can even look at, expected performance and some of this stuff. But the next layer to go back to after that, to go even deeper, is just how does this guy move? And is there potential in the way this guy moves for him to be an even more explosive athlete and to maybe hit the ball a little harder, play better defense, all that kind of stuff, steal more bases? And I think that's what the Brewers see there. Now, do I maybe see the upside with the bat that they do? I'm not so sure. So if it were up to me, I would probably just roll more with Rengifo as closer to the full-time option. But it's very clear that they seem to see a little bit more in that bat than a lot of people do. I do see what they're looking at with the defense, though. This is one of the quickest guys in baseball. And I think they're counting on, especially once he gets a little bit more coaching on the left side of the infield, that he can be one of the better defenders in baseball. So I'm sure that's certainly part of the equation as well. But I would guess against right-handed pitching, you're probably going to see, I don't know, maybe 60, 70% David Hamilton, Rengifo getting the rest of those starts. Against left-handed pitching, though, as a right-handed batter, they really, really do like Rengifo's bat from that side. He hits the ball a lot harder as a right-handed hitter, a little more power there. So I think that's really where they're hoping he can make the biggest impact. But kind of a situation where you have two guys who the surface level production and even some of the underlying production not looking great last year, but the Brewers are really banking on some of their own scouts, some of their ability to just evaluate how athletic they think a guy is. And that's where they seem to think that that future production is going to come from both of those guys.
Yeah, Jack Stern, Brewer Fanatic, read his stuff there. Make sure to check him out, and he does great work. Follow him on X as well at by Jack Stern for all the updates. And just 1 week from tonight, we'll be enjoying a exhibition game between the Reds and the Brewers at American Family Field. I'm interested to see what the the exhibition game feel is. We haven't had one of these in a while in Milwaukee, and then opening day 10 days away. Jack, appreciate you joining me tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Hunter.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. There he is, Jack Stern here on the Hunter Baumgardt Show as we discuss what is going to happen with the roster, what's going to happen with the starting rotation, what's going to happen with the Milwaukee Brewers. As again, we are getting closer and closer to opening day, which is so exciting. That's my, it just makes you excited when you see, okay, we may have got 30 inches and 30 inches of snow in some parts of the state today, but 10 days from now, the games are going to count. And 1 week from tonight, baseball games at American Family Field. Again, they've got 2 exhibition games, 6:40 on Monday, 4:10 next Tuesday, off Wednesday, opening day Thursday, and we hit the ground running for 162 games. Can't not wait to be back at the ballpark. All right, couple things before we finish up. We got some comments flying in here. Let's get to some of them here. Fantastic stuff from Jack, says Roger. I agree. Love having Jack on. Spencer says it's Jack. Yeah, Jack is a fan favorite, so absolutely. Which series are you guys most excited for this season? Oh, wow. Hey, look, any Cubs series is really, really fun to be at. They host Toronto in April. That's one I'm circling. AL champions come to Milwaukee in April, April 14th through the 16th, the fourth home series of the year. The Yankees come to town in May as well. I believe that's Mother's Day weekend, I would think. Let's see here. Who else comes to town? Just looking at the home ones. Seattle comes here. Of course, they had a deep run in the playoffs last year, so you got some good opponents. Especially, I love that they play everybody now. They either go to their place or they come to Milwaukee. Love that. Speaking of that, Wisco Grebe says, I'm going to Fenway for Sox and Brewers for the 4th series of the season. That is fantastic. That is awesome. Fenway Park, Brewers, Red Sox. Oh, well done. That is awesome. They're going to see Caleb Durbin. Maybe Kyle Harrison pitches against his former team. So that's going to be fun. Good. Let's see. He also says the September road trip in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Philly as my eye leading towards the end of the season. Yeah, that's a good one too. That's a three city road trip during the last 2 weeks of the season. The Brewers only have one home game, or one home series, I should say. One home series. It's against the St. Louis Cardinals. And that is going to be the last 3 games of the season. Otherwise, they will be on the road. Roger says, any more information on getting terrain locked up? No information on that yet. You know, Matt Arnold saying this spring that he's always open to conversations. That's the latest on that. He's tearing it up with Team USA. He didn't have a great game last night, but he made a nice diving stop against the Dominican Republic. His bat was 6 for his first 11 with Team USA, and just through the first 4 games played of the WBC was hitting .467. I mean, this guy, I think he's kind of becoming a superstar in front of our eyes. And you mix the glove with the power that you're seeing now and that batting average, look out. Look out for Bryce Terang. Right. Greg says, what is the battery looking like for opening day? Who will be catching, do you think? Ooh, that's a good question, Greg. I think so. I think William Contreras is catching. In fact, he's catching tonight for Venezuela as they face Italy in the World Baseball Classic semifinal. But I think he is the guy. And I think he's on opening day. And I think Gary Sanchez is your backup catcher. We were talking throughout the offseason about Jefferson Carroll probably being your guy. Probably being your backup catcher. Then they signed Reese McGuire. Then they signed Gary Sanchez. I think McGuire is kind of your Jorge Alfaro signing of last year. If you remember, Alfaro spent a lot of time in Nashville before he left. So I'm feeling McGuire may go there depending on what his options are. He may go elsewhere. We'll see. I don't know what his future will be with the Brewers organization, but Gary Sanchez is a guy who played in Milwaukee very recently, and I think he's got a guy who has chemistry with at least being behind William Contreras, and not necessarily that he has a lot of necessarily chemistry with the guys in the rotation, because I think they're all new except Woodruff since he was here. I mean, maybe like a Gasser, but otherwise, I don't necessarily think that any of them were pitching with him. So there you go. So I think the catcher situation, I think it's the two catchers that'll be on the roster, I think, are William Contreras and Gary Sanchez. Nick Harris says, going May 14th on my birthday against the Padres. Love that, Nick. That's awesome. That's a day game. Fantastic. 12:40 start. Love it. Fantastic. See you at the ballpark. Let's see here. Greg says, you've been in the clubhouse, a lot of new guys. What's the feeling there? Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how this team gels. Every team is a little different. The good news is with this team is that there's a lot of returners. We talked about it with Jack there, is that they're not turning over a ton of guys. Sure, they are in the rotation. There's obviously new faces. If Brandon Sprout, Kyle Harrison become key cogs in that starting rotation. But otherwise, you're going to look at this lineup on opening day, and the only difference that you will see from last year is going to be third base, I think. I mean, Garrett Mitchell, I guess, but he was on the team last year. But of course hurt, so he could get the start. But even if Blake Perkins gets the start, heck, even if Landon Lockridge somehow makes the team, I mean, he's got 4 homers this spring, grand slam today. I don't necessarily. That was one thing I was going to ask Jack. We didn't have time, but just to kind of get his feel on the outfield, because I'm interested to see what they do with that. But there's a lot of continuity here. First base, Vaughn and Bowers, so I really think it's going to be a very similar feel to last year, and that's good because you won 97 wins. But I will definitely report on that as the season goes on. Definitely follow us here. Charles, do you think we'll see Bowers in the outfield to get his bat in the lineup? What it does is with Jake Bowers, his ability to play the outfield is it limits the opportunity for maybe a Brandon Lockridge to make this roster, or a Akil Baddoo, but Baddoo is now hurt and he will not start the season with the club. He'll probably start the season maybe in Nashville, but Pat Murphy thinks he'll impact the club at some point this season, talking about Akil Baddoo. But what it does is you can keep Bowers on your bench and he can play first base, but he can also DH, but he can also play outfield. And that versatility is really key. Really no one else that can do that. I mean, Jet Williams, if he's on the team, could play outfield and infield. Otherwise, your Monasterio, I know Monasterio is mostly, a infielder, but could play outfield in a pinch. But yeah, I think you will see that, Charles. I think you will absolutely see that. I think it's in left field probably, if anywhere. But they could move around. I don't think he's going to play center, but they could put him in right possibly. I think Frelick's, pretty much locked over there. But then you have maybe Churio in center. Maybe you get Churio off his feet, but you get Bowers in lineup against a right-handed pitcher. I think they're going to try to be creative, especially if he's as hot as he was second half of the season and in spring so far, that they're going to try to get his bat in that lineup against a right-handed pitcher whenever they can. I think that's going to be key because if he's hitting as well as he has, then they're going to try to fit him into the lineup somehow, some way, whether that's outfield, whether that's first base. So good point, Charles. Absolutely. Three Oaks says Brewers Cubs will be loud for sure. Hope to see Brewers Mets. Yeah, the Mets come to town. That's later July, just after the All-Star break. They host Miami for 3 and then the Mets for 3. So yeah, always big when you got the Mets in town, and hopefully Freddie Peralta is starting one of those games for the Mets because that always makes for a great atmosphere. Let me see here. What's the latest with Logan Henderson? Logan Henderson threw a good bullpen session late last week. Should be in a game soon. I think he is. It's a lot. He had some elbow soreness, but I think he's kind of past that now. It sounds like he's trending in a very good direction. So that's good news on him. Let's see here. World Baseball Classic question. Would you rather see USA face Italy or Venezuela? That's a good question. Yeah, it would be fun. By the way, taking a look at that, Venezuela and Italy tied at 0 in the bottom of the second, but Italy has the bases loaded right now. Fisher's at the plate. He might have just walked, though. Andrew Fisher, first-round pick of the Milwaukee Brewers in 2025. Yeah, he just walked to load the bases. So he's on Team Italy 0-0, but Italy threatening against Venezuela in the World Baseball Classic right now. I think I would want Venezuela too, because it would be really fun to see Churio, Serpa, and Contreras one last time in the World Baseball Classic and against Terang in the U.S. I think I am cheering for Venezuela, but the underdog story of Italy is fun as well. Greg says, let's see, any chance of you hosting a post-game show? Oh, appreciate that, Greg. Well, here's the stay tuned. Stay tuned. We are going to have some fun programming on here, specifically at some points during the season for sure. It might be after some games. It's kind of fluid, but we are working on things. So stay tuned. Okay. Stay tuned because we're gonna have some fun this season, and I wanted to get these shows going in the off season, have some fun here, answer your questions, because then once the regular season starts, maybe we can all hop on here after a game. Maybe after, hey, they're at Fenway, let's all have some, talk about the game after it's done here on YouTube. So yes, subscribe to the channel if you are not already. I know you're on Facebook, maybe Greg, but flip over to YouTube maybe and subscribe to the YouTube channel, but also on Facebook on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Facebook page. I'll keep you updated. If I'm going live, I will post it. And maybe you'll even get the notification if you follow the Facebook page. And if you don't, Hunter Baumgardt Sports is the Facebook page as well. Now, a couple of notes. This just hitting the wire here. Just some news here. Latest big league camp cuts for the Brewers per Adam McCalvey of MLB.com. Carlos Rodriguez option to AAA Nashville, and then Luis Lara, Brock Wilken, Jet Williams, all going to minor league camp. And so they will be joining the minors. So Jet Williams not going to make the opening day roster. I didn't expect him to. They are going to be able to, get him some at-bats consistently. He was hurt for some of this spring training, so he didn't get a full spring training, but boy, has he hit really well when he's been playing at spring training. Let's see his batting average right now in spring training. Jet Williams is hitting .417 with an OPS of 1.313 at spring training. I am really excited to see what Jet Williams can do, but right now there's just not a spot for him. They're high on David Hamilton, as Jack Stern talked about. David Hamilton's kind of your utility guy. Williams only has like 30-some games in AAA so far in his career. I think they want to get him a little more legs underneath him at AAA. But I think you see him at some point this year. And maybe that's a Caleb Durbin, right? Durbin started the year at AAA last year, came up at some point. I think that's possible. So yeah, that was a little breaking news there for you, Three Oaks. Yep. Those were, again, Carlos Rodriguez optioned. Luis Lara headed to minor league camp along with Brock Wilken, and also, as mentioned just there, Jet Williams too, and Jacob Waguespack as well. So Let me see here. What would you rather win? I like these. Keep firing in the questions. This is fun. What would you rather win, a World Series or a WBC? Aaron Judge said the atmosphere for a World Baseball Classic game is better than a World Series game. I mean, I just from watching on TV, I've never attended a World Series game. I've never attended a World Baseball Classic game, but I gotta say, it seems to be comparable at least. If I were one of the other countries, I can imagine that a World Baseball Classic might mean more because you are representing your country, right? If you're from the Dominican Republic, and you come to the United States and you're playing baseball in the major leagues, that's one thing. It's another to represent your country and then try and beat those in the USA, like the Dominican Republic did last night, or like Venezuela, or even Italy might try to do come up tomorrow night. So I think the answer might be different for those who grew up in the United States, because if you grew up in the United States, the World Series was the ultimate goal in baseball. But if you grew up outside of it, the World Baseball Classic kind of means more to them. And I don't, I understand that. And I would also say it's probably not easy to lose last night. And then just go right back into trying to get ready for a major league season. I mean, that's a tough loss, especially for the Dominican Republic last night. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about as we wrap up here soon. Keep firing in the questions, though. We'll continue to get to them. The ABS, okay, automatic ball strike has obviously been implemented in spring training, and it's going to be implemented in the regular season come 10 days from now. We'll see it in the regular season. But last night, do you see the ending of the game last night between the Dominican Republic and Team USA? So here's why ABS will be great for baseball in 3 pictures, okay? And here's the thing about this. Let's look from left to right. Perdomo was up, Mason Miller on the mound, 3-2 count, and look where this pitch is. You can see it in 3 different variations, right? It's about to be caught on the left. Then the middle, it's where it's caught. And then on the right, you see the little baseball, which is going to be different because there used to be dots, but you can't show if it's a strike or if it's a ball now. So it's going to be just a baseball there. I would assume Brewers TV would probably do the same or something similar. But so you can clearly see where that is, right? That is shins. That's not knees. And especially where he's catching the ball and Perdomo's even bending down and it's still right about at his knees. That's a ball. And I know people were saying that this was called a strike for a significant amount of the night. And it was. So he was consistent. But at the end of the day, don't you want to be right? Like people were defending it today. I saw a lot of people defending this call saying, yeah, but he was calling it there all night. But that's not the rule. The rule is if it's a strike, it's a strike. And that's why I really am excited for ABS, because it's going to tell us what's a strike and what's not a strike. And it's going to I can't say not allow this to happen, because it could if the Dominican Republic, say, was out of challenges, right? Then that, of course, the game would be over either way. But in this spot, this is why I like ABS, is because it can correct the egregious calls, especially in a big moment like that. And so teams are obviously going to be learning as the season goes on, as far as, okay, how do we use our challenges? When do we use our challenges? What's the best strategy? The Brewers have been trying to figure that out. They brought out the postcards or the green boards and everything, and then MLB told them not to. And so they're trying to figure out how they're going to strategize it and everything. And I think every team is kind of going through that. And it's been a lot of trial and error in spring training. But those types of calls are why the ABS system is going to be great for baseball, because if you have a challenge at that point, you challenge, it's a ball, you get the call right. And at the end of the day, you just want the call to be right. And that's my thing on it. And as much as he was calling it there all night, he shouldn't be calling it there all night. Like it's like an NFL game. It's like in an NFL game, if you just had 1 foot in on a catch And you're like, well, yeah, but tonight it's just 1 foot in. I know it's been 2 feet the whole season, or it's been 2 feet in bounds for a catch for the whole season. But tonight we're just gonna have 1 foot. That's not how it works. It's a strike is a strike, and that's not a strike. And I'm more inclined to be accepting of it in the first inning than I am the ninth inning. And I get it. Umping is hard. And again, I'm not necessarily getting on the umpire. I'm just saying this is why ABS is going to be good for baseball. I'm not necessarily saying, okay, well, bad umpire, bad umpire. It was a bad call. And he had some bad calls throughout the night, but I guess he was consistent. But this is why ABS is going to be good for baseball. So I really think that it is going to be the case. Let me see here. Rogers has been waiting for a World Series since we lost in 82. You know it, right, Roger? One more thing I want to circle back to before we take off here tonight. Italy, by the way, up 2-0 on Venezuela, bottom of the second inning. So Italy has scored a couple, and they've taken the lead against Venezuela. Winner to play U.S. tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on Fox. One more thing before we go, and if you have any last comments or questions, let me know. 2 quick things we covered at the very beginning, but if you just hopped in, I want to update you on. First is a really cool thing coming out this summer that the Brewers announced today, and that is a documentary about Bob Uecker titled Uke. And coming up on opening day, which is 10 days from now, Thursday, March 26th, against the White Sox, immediately following the conclusion of the game, fans are encouraged to remain in their seats for the debut of a 20-minute segment from this film, marking the first ever public showing of the documentary that is more than 2 years in the making. So, number one, this is going to be awesome. It chronicles the incredible life of the immortal and beloved Bob Uecker, and it is produced by September Club. The documentary will enjoy a major theatrical release later this summer, with more details to be announced. So again, if you are going to opening day, maybe you want to consider going to opening day now. If you weren't, because you'll see the 20-minute preview, this is really cool. This is going to be so cool. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, I have seen and especially the last season of Bob Uecker, so 2024, the last season that Bob Uecker was the voice of the Brewers, I saw some production teams, camera guys following him around some at different games. And I always thought, this is going to be really cool whenever they come out with this. And yeah, this is going to be really neat. So that's going to be something you're going to want to watch. And again, it's going to be debuting this summer, and I'm sure we'll hear more as that comes. Also, one more thing, TV. If you're looking for channels still, if you had the Brewers on cable last season, you will likely have them on cable again. We're just waiting on channel numbers from the Brewers. So that'll come before opening day. Don't you worry. So if you're like, I don't know what channel the Brewers are going to be on, you will know by opening day. In fact, Rick Schlesinger, president of business operations for the Brewers, going to be talking to reporters coming up on Wednesday. I'll be there. So definitely come on over to @HunterBeOnAir, whether it be on X, Instagram, TikTok. I'll keep you posted on whatever we learn as far as any new information on Brewers TV and everything like that. So very, very, very interesting to see how this all plays out, but it's going to be, I think, really good. When all is said and done, you're going to enjoy these TV broadcasts because there's going to be some different enhancements that you're going to be able to see, and it's cool. And of course, Brewers.tv is where you can buy the $99.99 subscription for the full season. That is tonight's show, everyone. Thank you so much for all the comments and questions. Really appreciate it. I've enjoyed doing these Monday shows. Next Monday, we won't be live because the Brewers will be playing an exhibition game and I'll be at the ballpark, but keep tuned. I'm going to try to do a season preview, and it might be a recorded edition. So if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube so then you get a notification when things get posted or when I go live. And then we start the season, and yeah, definitely be looking out for that. And then also, if you are on Facebook, Hunter Baumgardt Sports Facebook page, just keep tabs on it. Keep tabs on the Facebook page, and you will find when different posts, and I'll keep you updated there. So thanks so much for watching, everybody, tonight. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Jack Stern of Brewer Fanatic for joining us. And if you missed any of tonight's show, you can watch it back on YouTube at Hunter B on Air, the Hunter Baumgardt Show. Just search that, or on Facebook, Hunter Baumgardt Sports on Facebook. Thanks so much for watching tonight. We're 10 days away from opening day. Have a good night.